ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Sounds of the Valley, our first episode of the new season. With me, I have my beautiful show host,
Charlie Roettger.
and today we have on one of my friends, and how'd you describe yourself, Stosh?
Two-time Blue Gold, Eau Claire native, pretend musician, and now sitting on this chair.
I think you sell yourself a little short there, but yeah, Stosh is a musician here in Eau Claire that's done a variety of different work with a lot of pretty
notorious bands, I'd
Yeah.
say.
Pretty notorious, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess just kind of starting off here, when did you start learning music? What's your musical background?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me on, guys, and thanks for thinking I have something to contribute. But yeah, I am from Eau Claire, and I think that actually does say something just because Eau Claire does have a reputation not of necessarily being great, but I grew up being around UW-EC my entire life. There's a reputation of some pretty amazing musicians that have come from Eau Claire, especially ones that went to Eau Claire Memorial, which I went. I always say if I was born 10 years earlier, I probably would be a famous indie rock musician, but not. That's just kind of the way it is. So yeah, my parents made me take violin lessons. I just grew up like anybody else, I think probably like you, going through a middle school band, and it's just kind of funny thinking about that choice in 5th grade when I signed up to be a percussionist or whatever, and I went to DeLong Middle School. If I went to South, I wouldn't have been able to do percussion because I didn't take piano, but DeLong I did, and it obviously changed the world because now, no, I'm just kidding. And yeah, the things they don't tell you about that decision, for some people it means nothing. For me, it means that I've had to schlep a lot of stuff in my life, was checking that box. And anyways, I don't know if you want me to go on, but I went through the whole everything, and then I went to UW-EC not as a music student, actually. I went in as a geography student, and it was another kind of fateful moment where somebody was like, yeah, I think UW-EC needs a couple percussionists. You should probably audition, because I was doing BMB. That's all I really wanted to do. And I was like, sure. And that just changed everything. So I kind of was a music major for a while. I changed my mind, actually. I burnt out after a semester and a half of being a music student. I was like, this is dumb. I graduated with my geography degree, worked at Noodles and Company for a while, and then I could tell you more about after that. But after that, that's kind of when I realized a bunch of stuff, and since then I've played with a lot of people, so yeah.
Nice. Definitely, I would say have a pretty interesting journey, I think. I think it's also one that a lot of people can relate to. I know that I myself and probably most music managers can relate with the whole, that small choice when you're 10, where it's oh, I like this instrument, and then it's 10 years later and you're like, I've been playing the French horn or percussion or trumpet or clarinet.
It's like a curse for some people, I think. Yeah, sometimes I wish I was a guitar player, but I'm just I'm a closet guitar player. I don't play guitar, but drums is just my cross to carry through life or whatever. I don't know. It's just yeah.
Was there something that specifically drew you to drums over other instruments, or something that could you just keep rhythm really well, or what drew you to it?
Well, I guess there are a couple things. I mean, and I know I'm maybe not even giving that interesting of answers, but the first thing is my dad was a percussionist, and he actually discouraged me from taking percussion. He was he did it in the Navy band or something like that. So he had, there were a couple moments that aren't even that significant in the grand scheme of things, but to a child were really significant. And that's why I was thinking about that when seeing younger musicians, or sorry, not even musicians, younger kids, anything that I could be doing might actually be changing their life, because I saw BMB once, and I was just and this is when BMB sucked. That's the other thing. If I saw them today, I probably would have been losing my mind, but they had red and yellow taped sticks or whatever, and I was like, oh man. I even saw Chippewa Valley Symphony, and I've got to play in both of those groups over my life. In Chippewa Valley Symphony, they're playing the Lord of the Rings soundtrack or whatever, and it's yeah, it's just like those kind of sort of insignificant things that that made me initially want to do it, and then I don't know, I was too good of like, I shouldn't say I was a good student, but especially in middle school, I was the kind of student that would do their homework. So when my band director said to practice 23 minutes a day, like I practiced 23 minutes a day. So that's, yeah.
Nice. So you mentioned some of the different groups that you've kind of been working with. So do you want to kind of go in depth a little bit more? Like what different like bands, or like you said, the Chippewa Valley Symphony, like what different groups have you kind of been a part of here?
Yeah, so I mean, another thing that like I've said about like growing up in Eau Claire, it's not like it's huge, but there is a little bit of everything for somebody, I think. And I'm really lucky that I've kind of been able to find myself just like accidentally in so many musical fields. Like beginning honestly with the classical world, because I began violin and switched to percussion. My dad was always like, you gotta keep playing violin, you're gonna get more gigs or whatever. He's like, the percussion player in an orchestra just plays like triangle like 3 times or whatever. But I'm glad I play percussion. Violin is great too. But yeah, so I kind of accidentally got involved in like symphony orchestra through UW-EC, and because of that, because of Nobu, got involved in CVS, I got involved in Echo, and I've just been playing with those groups for like probably the last like 7 years, kind of off and on, whenever they need me. And I went through the whole jazz thing in high school. I'm not the greatest jazz player, but that's a whole nother realm of Eau Claire music. But as I mentioned earlier, kind of like a pivotal point in my life was after I finished my first degree at UW-EC, and then I decided again to go back to UW-EC. I took like a year off. Like it wasn't even a year off because I graduated, but it was a year where I was just like working and like depressed, and like pretty much like I joined like a dumb, I shouldn't say dumb, no offense to those guys listening, like a band that would just play like house shows, and I hadn't really played a whole lot of like rock music, like I had, but like I wasn't really in a band. But this is like a band that's playing house shows called Raptor Octavius. And so I played with them for a little while because of that. Oh no, then I had this weird thing where I wanted to become a figure skater. Not really, but like I was like, I want to take figure skating lessons. From that, I met my figure skating teacher is a musician, and since then we've been in a band for the last like 3 years and are just wrapping up an EP actually. Oh, wow. And then I went back to UW-EC, and because I took music classes, I got to know some people. I got to know them Coolie Boys drummer. He asked me to fill in, and for a summer, and I've been the drummer since last year, since he decided to move on. So it's like one of those things where like I can't credit UW-EC for everything, but that's like one thing that inadvertently I wouldn't be playing with them Coolie Boys if it wasn't because I went back. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. You've had like a really wild ride then, just kind of like gigging around and just meeting different people, you know. That's really awesome, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's just kismet. It's just like you've just gone through so many different journeys and like so many different like places in your life where just by sheer coincidence, by some small event, like suddenly taking you into a big opportunity. And so that's kind of been a big theme I've noticed with just the amount of guests that we've had, is that those sort of things just kind of roll out of nowhere, like nothing is really planned.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, you probably hear about that with all sorts of musicians, and it's frustrating. There's a reason why so many musicians are anxious and depressed, because or like want to go through a route that's like pretty cut and dry. I've never been one to be good at promoting myself. Definitely not, like I've never done like a solo TV interview, so thank you. So anyway, so that's like one thing, or like whatever. So like, but I think you've probably heard people say it before. It's just like, you know, just like be a good person, of course, and like you should try to be a good musician. But as long as you're like easy to work with, and like, and I think I'm that. I'm just like, keeping myself available, keeping like just being open-minded, and like, you know, it's definitely a lot of luck. But I don't even know how the saying goes, where it's just like, you know, you just like, you work hard so you get lucky or something, you know, isn't there something along those lines or whatever like that? Because it's like, you just keep trying to create opportunities for yourself, and yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I think like another really big point that you kind of mentioned there, and it might come off as like pretty low key, but you know, like you said, being like someone that's nice, someone that's easy to work with, that's like so big in just like music because there's 1,000 different people that like anyone can turn to try and like get stuff done. But if you're working with someone that just is like just a chill person, they work well you work well together, you know, that just like makes all the difference with any musical project. So yeah, that's an understated ticket, I think, you know, especially after like, I know that in like jazz, a lot of people in Eau Claire are connected to the jazz program, and in jazz history, there's famously a ton of like band directors and things like that who are just notoriously just mean. I'll say that. They are notoriously mean. And now it's like there's so many musicians out there where it's like you really can't afford to be mean unless you're like really established.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's all about good hangs. Like I've heard that. I mean, I've even heard some professors say that. Like that's how you become a good music or like a successful musician. Just like it's about the hangs. Yeah.
So, what's it like for you kind of coming into a band that's already an established group with them Coolie Boys?
Well, it's outstanding. I mean, and I think that like I really don't think, like, I'm not trying to sell myself short, that I'm not like always the most creative musicians. What I do love is just like I like playing drums and being in the back. Like as an introverted person like myself, that's just like there's no place I'd rather be, because like just real quick, somebody pointed out to me that being on stage is just like awesome for introverts because you don't have to like compete for like attention. And I think about that all the time, especially because like I'm in my own box, like everybody's like paying attention to me, like it's great. So I like that. Like, I mean, I wish I was a little bit more outgoing with like creating my own music, but just like collaborating with people I think is the most beautiful thing I find with music. Just like, even if it's somebody has an idea, like how can I make that idea better or whatever, or just like getting in a room and just jamming and whatever. So with them Coolie Boys, they're a band that's like, I think they're successful just because like they have worked really hard since like 2013 is like when they like officially became a band. They went through all of like the really terrible gigs, and I've played some terrible gigs with them where there are like 3 people there in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and there's a guy outside like that's been banned from the bar trying to, you know, that happened. But for the most part, like I hear like horror stories about like the 4-hour gigs they had to do, and it was like minus 20 degrees and like a 3-hour drive away, or like whatever, like any stuff like that. I skipped that. Like my first gig with them was for like 3 people in Urbana, Illinois. 7 gigs later, I was playing for like 1,000 people at Blue Ox Music Festival. You know, so that's just like, they were like, I promise, this is like a weird show. Like it gets better. And yeah, like they've done so much like legwork to get to the point where they're at, and like their trajectory. And I keep saying they, I mean it's us, but like really, I almost like feel like I can't take much credit. It's just great. Like it's like, hear the songs, you learn them, and I mean since then, I've got to certainly add my own like touch to everything. I've recorded an entire album with them, which like I'm not the primary songwriter, but I wrote all the drum parts. I mean, I'd like to think that it wouldn't be the same like without me, and you know, and it's in anybody in the band, you could say that. So, but yeah, it's great. Find yourself a band that you can just tour with, and then get a bunch of exposure and money, and then launch your own solo career. I guess that's the yeah.
I guess kind of going off of that, like, what is it like being a touring musician? You know, can you go into that a little bit more? Because I know that as a very amateur musician myself, I never got to the point where I could, you know, tour. And I think that's a big thing for a lot of people, where it's like, when do you make that step from like being at a lot of different like bars and stuff like that, and kind of being well known in your local area, to like getting on the touring stage?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, and like, I wish I could even like answer like that, like the last thing you said a little bit better, because yeah, having that jump from like being like just like a local band to a nationally touring band, like I've been in both, but I didn't experience that. Like that's what I'm saying, like the Coolie Boys, like that. Although maybe I guess you could say I'm experiencing that right now. Like we played some like pretty dumb shows. I won't say where or when they were, but like already this summer where it's like, why are we here? Like nobody's here. So like clearly we have a lot of ways to go. But yeah, I know when I was first playing with a couple bands like Raptor, Octavius, and whatever, it was kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, we want to tour. Like and like one way to do it is like house show tours. Like the house show there's a whole like there's a Facebook group where there's just like thousands and thousands of people on it that you can just like say like, I want to play in this city. Can somebody get me a house show? And a lot of times those are really well attended. They don't pay well, but like, but for me, like touring is exactly what I want to do. And I'm also like, I keep saying I'm lucky, and you're probably sick of me saying that, but I'm grateful because it's something that I thought I wanted to do, and it's something that as it turns out, I do want to do. Like, I haven't recorded as much as I'd like to, and it's totally different. You know, recording is like nerve-wracking, like for me, but performing, like there's like, I feel in my element, and besides that, like just, I can't really imagine like a better way to see the country. Like traveling is another thing that people love to do, and when I get paid to travel, and like a lot of times we're just playing in some like small bar, but still you're experiencing culture around the world. I mean, when we start to like tour internationally, then that's going to be really something special. But yeah, the thing is you just got to like the people that you're touring with, and thankfully they're all great guys because we're with each other 24/7, you know. It's just, yeah.
So what does touring look like for you? Like when you go out on a tour, like usually how long are you on the road for, and like just what's that whole experience like?
Well, it's I guess I mean I can describe to you how it's been, but the thing is, so I toured with them in summer of 2019, and I think that was normal. There was one tour where we were gone for like about 3 weeks, and you know, we're not quite at the point where you probably a lot of like our favorite bands, you see like a tour poster and they're gone for like a month or two or whatever, and that's like, you know, we're not quite there yet. But there was one tour where we were gone like 3 weeks, and at the time that was their longest one yet. That's, yeah, you hop in the van, you play a bunch of shows, stay in hotels and like whatever, and then you come back. But because of the pandemic, let me tell you, the whole like industry of like especially booking is just been, unless you're like a big well-established band, you're probably not playing like long tours. Like there's some in like, it's this whole summer, it's just been weekend, which is kind of, that's not how it's always been, because they've always been the ones to like go on like longer tours. The summer is like, there's lots of music festivals, so you play those. But it actually has been, that's been the biggest kind of bummer, and it's kind of been draining. And I just keep thinking I got to keep pushing through, because since the end of May, when things like sort of started to like open up, I've had a show every single weekend. So I've not had a single weekend free, and it's just, yeah. So it's kind of exhausting, but yeah, you just have to like plan your life around it, because if you can't play it, like, I don't know, there's not a sub. Like, that's, yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty intense for you. Kudos on you for like being able to keep that up, you know, because like having that time to be able to like rest, relax, like kind of just look in on yourself, especially as like a fellow introvert. I think all three of us on the couch are introverts here. We all know what it's like to just be like, all right, I just need time for myself, recharge.
Yeah. How exactly do you avoid that burnout? Because if you're just like touring and you're just playing gigs literally like every single weekend, like how do you re-energize yourself? Or does the music itself, like playing those shows in and of itself, give you the energy to play the next gig?
Well, that's a great question, because I mean, there's certainly there's a lot of mental health that you like struggle with, like I struggle with, and I think everybody does. Like, especially like, you know, there's the part where like maybe you think like negatively about yourself, because especially when you're playing the same music like every single night. First of all, it's like easy to get good at it. Like, I mean, I wish I actually had time to practice drums more, but like part of it's just like when you're playing a show like all the time, like it's kind of like it just is gonna happen. But then you also are like, oh man, that was like really bad, or like whatever, and then you start to like think, but and there's also, for me, like there's a lot of just kind of like hope that things are gonna become a little bit more normal, because I think the goal is to have like be gone, like have like a couple weeks on where you're on a tour, and then a bunch of like 10 days off or something like that. And maybe that doesn't sound like that significant, but it really is. Like, you know, the tour, it's like you're on an adventure, and then you get the time to recover. So it's been a little bit lacking on that note, but for us, like being together all the time, like we do like really respect each other. We know how each other like cope with like anger, or like we know when each other needs space. We respect each other's space, so there's plenty of time to like read a book, like listen to music, like whatever. And then like you kind of asked about it too. Like when you do play like a show, like when you play at like Blue Ox Music Festival, it's just like this is the reason I do this, because it's like there were a couple shows just a couple weeks ago that I alluded to that were like they were like really bad. Like it was just like not a lot of people there, and it was kind of like this is a waste. But also then it was kind of like this is good for us because it's keeping us in check. Like we're feeling we're feeling like we're on top of the world, which we're not. And it's like, yeah, no, we gotta we're working hard, but we gotta embrace the opportunities we have. Like we've had a lot of great shows. And I still can't believe it. You know, it's like, why are people coming out to these? But yeah, it's yeah.
Nice.
Rad. Well, this is a little bit out of left field, but I was doing a little bit of homework, and I was looking up them Cooley Boys website, and I just happened to read your bio, and I saw that under your musical influences, that the two, if not biggest ones, the first ones that were listed were King Crimson and Kendrick Lamar, which I thought was fascinating, considering that like one's more in like psychedelic rock, the other one's in hip hop, and then you're playing in like kind of folksy band. And so like how do you take, and I know that you've played in a lot of different bands, and so how do you just take all these different, like completely different sounds and kind of channel them into the genre that you're currently playing?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, thanks. I'm so flattered that you were even looking into that. It's also kind of ironic, I suppose, in a way, because like now, like I never even thought about this. Like part of it, like when I put those like bands on there, I wanted to just be like different. Like, I mean, I love all
Sure.
of them, but it's like, ooh, this is like a bio for like an Americana band. Well, like, suck it. Like, no, but also I've seen both of those artists, King Crimson and Kendrick Lamar, both in 2017, which, as I said earlier in the interview, is kind of like the most pivotal Stosh year there is, when I like turned a new leaf where like I want to be a musician kind of like deal. So anyways, that's just kind of like a weird like subconscious thing, I suppose. And also, I keep kind of returning to things I've already said, but I for me, like, I can't imagine just playing like one kind of music like my whole life. Like, I don't know if I could ever just play with them Cooley Boys, and because some of those guys, that's the only band they play in. So it's a little bit maybe like more important to them or something like that. Or I shouldn't even say more important. For me, like the joys of music are like collaborating with other people, and then just like the variety. Like I love that I can play in an orchestra, a rock band, a metal band, an R&B band, an indie band, like jazz from time to time, musical theater or whatever, like, and then like Americana. And so I think that like I've maybe met people like this that are like music majors or whatever, that they play an instrument but they don't really like music or whatever. For me, like the whole reason I wanted to become a musician is because I like shows and I like a wide variety of music. I'm always listening to something different, and I think it just makes life just more enriching. And so like I try to practice a bunch of different styles, and it's more so like I think just inadvertently they're gonna like try to come through, because like every day I'm just like trying to like, you know, just like push myself and like, can I do something like a little bit different? And I'm not trying to like play like a metal drum fill over like a bluegrass song all the time or whatever, but like if there's something like just subconsciously something you listen to is like gonna come through, I think. And I mean, another thing I like to think about is just like, there's so many people that just like hate on lots of different kinds of music. And I just think like what a dull life that is. Like when I really realized that like just about every kind of music, you can find some value in it, whether it's like the cultural value of like bro country music. Like there are millions of people that like vibe with that kind of music, and that's pretty cool. And let me tell you too, we've also opened for a couple bro country artists. We've opened for Joe Nichols. Well, I don't know if he's called like bro country, but he's the song that's like did like Tequila Makes Her Clothes Fall Off or something like that. We opened where we played on the same stage as like Little Big Town, and like that's just like seeing those kind of people, like, which is not like my crowd or whatever, but they're different, or they're human beings, and they're just into like different stuff, and they really, really like it, and I just like it. If you like music, that's a beautiful thing. Like it, yeah.
Nice. I kind of like touching on like one of your earlier points there, you know, talking about how for you, you know, you can't ever imagine just playing, you know, either just in just one group or just one genre. You know, I think that's a thing that a lot of musicians really feel, you know, over time, as they spend a lot of time, you know, working with other musicians, frankly, because most of the musicians that like I listen to, you know, bands and stuff like that, most, if not all of them, are involved in other people's projects and stuff like that. You know, they all have like a bunch of different side gigs and stuff like that, and they're constantly working and mixing with each other, you know, and I think that's like a really big part of how, you know, you think about how genres are like propelled and stuff like that. It's by that big ol' mixing of it.
Yeah, like yeah, the drummer for Fall Out Boy plays in like a really heavy like hardcore band. Like what a great life. Like he gets to like play those huge shows where he gets probably paid like millions of dollars and then gets to play like gnarly music. Like that's what I want. But yeah, so yeah.
I know you've also kind of touched a little bit on like some of the different genres that you like. I know Stas, just from like a little bit of experience with, you know, we've jammed together a couple of times, that you're a huge metalhead. So I feel kind of obligated to ask myself, how does that like, how do you feel that kind of impacts like your own musical style? And then of course, I gotta also put you on the spot and ask like, what are some of your favorite bands or albums?
Yeah, that's the song I've been most or the question I've been most nervous for all interview. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, so I mean, I don't want to go like too deep into it because I'm sure like I'm talking already too much, but just even becoming like a fan of metal was something that like came like later in life. Like I was in college, like I never went through that like swoopy hair like Hot Topic phase or anything. And it was like one of those things where like I discovered that was like a music that just like knows no boundaries, and like where other genres like refuse to go, like metal will go there. Sometimes it's problematic, and like so like, you know, let's put that aside, but sometimes it's like just like musically or lyrically or whatever, like it can just be like an amazing thing. And I just think that like for people that can like learn to appreciate heavy metal music, like and actually develop like a sophisticated like appreciation for it, like you can almost enjoy any kind of music. Now there are like frustrating metalheads, of course, but like again, we don't need to go into that. I mean, yeah, I always wanted to be, or like for many years I wanted to be like a metal drummer, and I still would like to be a metal drummer, but I realized like it is so hard. Like that's like, do you know the band King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard? Like
Oh, yeah.
they like released like one metal album like a couple years ago, right? And they were like, yeah, I always wanted to play metal music, but when I started playing guitar, I realized how hard it is, so I just decided to start like a psychedelic rock band. And like that's me. Like, you know, but yeah, so but there's just like, and I think going back to like when we were talking about just like there's so much to like learn from so many different kinds of music. I mean, there's a lot you can learn from metal music, whether it's just specifically the drumming, like yeah, like kinds of drum fills, like the precision, like anything like that. And I've just within metal, there's just a whole like world of, as you know, subgenres and sounds. That's like it's not just like one thing. There's so much expression and like, and that's why oh god, like thinking of like what my favorite bands or like albums are, I mean I love that you asked that question, but like I'm gonna think about it too hard. I think that, well, first of all, that's like definitely one of the best albums of the 2010s as far as like metal goes. It took me a while. I always say that the first metal album that I really liked was the first Winter Sun album. I don't know if it's my favorite anymore, but I do like that one. I also think Gojira is a band that everybody seems to like. I got a shirt for Gojira from like Hot Topic, but they are like one of a kind. And
Oh yeah, I know the Gojira hype. I definitely maybe listened to all of their new album the day it released, you know, as one does. Also, just for those of you at home that were wondering, what Stas was kind of referencing is that he was pointing at my shirt. It's Behemoth.
Yeah.
Specifically their album The Satanist. Yeah, but no, I dig it. I'm definitely gonna have to listen to, was it Winter Sun you said?
Yeah, it's like Finnish melodic death metal from 2004. It's a little cheesy, but it was my favorite for many years. So
I mean,
yeah.
hey, we all have those cheesy little digs that we love. There's definitely a part of like my big playlist of metal that just is like, I don't typically listen to that stuff, but there's a small part of me that really enjoys it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and also, okay. Sorry. One more too. I know is like I remember I used to rip on Judas Priest a lot. They're obviously not a new band, and I was looking through that metal chat we're part of, where there's like a couple years ago, I was like just trashing Judas Priest. Screaming for Vengeance, that album is so good. I've listened to that album probably more than any metal album this year, I'm embarrassed to say, so yeah.
Nice.
Well, right on, man. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so flattered, so thanks.
Just one last thing before we wrap up. Is there anything you want to plug? Any socials? Any YouTube? Any?
I mean, you can follow me on Instagram. I mean, I need to like actually post on there. That would probably like help build my whatever. But yeah, well, look out for a new Elvesa EP that's going to be coming out. The Raptor Octavius album is in the works. Who knows when they're going to be coming out? But them Cooley Boys, we're playing all the time. We'll be at the Pablo Center in November for maybe 2 shows, at least 1. But you know, and then yeah, I'm sure you'll see me filling in for some church gig or something somewhere. That's just how it usually works. Yeah.
All right then. Well, that is all we have for our show tonight. I'm Nathan Blaser.
My name is Charlie Roettger, and you folks have yourselves a wonderful night.